Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video it is going to be another Let's Discuss. Meaning that this is a discussion style video where I will give my own personal thoughts and opinions on a certain topic, hoping to get your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. And for today's topic it is going to be, where does the MonsterVerse go from here? With Godzilla vs. Kong finally hitting theaters and being an absolute smash hit with both fans and at the box office, the only question that most of us are left with is, where does the MonsterVerse go now? If you look at it, this is what they were setting up for the entire time. You only had Godzilla and Kong movies, and we all knew that they were leading up to this. So with the dust finally settled and we know how that bout ends, what happens next? And a quick note before we hop into the actual content of the video, I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my Let's Discuss videos. So be sure to check that out and I guarantee you'll find a topic that you like. And so, without further ado, let's hop right into things. So as we all know, this MonsterVerse is sort of in limbo right now. And there was no end credit scene at the end of Godzilla vs. Kong because director Adam Wingard saying that the studio needs to hear it from the fans if they want the universe to continue. Saying that the MonsterVerse is at a crossroads and that the audience needs to vote if they want to see more. And I would guess that that is likely because of how poorly King of the Monsters was received. He cites Marvel as being the best in the business at doing this whole universe thing, and says that they don't necessarily need to be the same. I think it's actually pretty smart that they're not making promises that they can't keep, or setting up cliffhangers that they can't fulfill on. But now let's go for a bit more of an idea generation approach here. What can they do if the MonsterVerse continues? Because I think it's pretty safe to say that people do want to see more. I mean, for much of the world, we are still very much so in a global pandemic. Lots of places still don't have their theaters open, and this movie has still managed to make $350 million. And that number continues to grow. Not to mention the at-home streaming numbers were the best on HBO Max yet. So firstly, let's go with the obvious idea. Why don't they just adapt old school Godzilla and King Kong movies? A couple of ideas that I have had and that I have heard of being remakes of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, Godzilla vs. Biollante, or even Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Like, why not, right? Let's just go crazy. Although King Kong has virtually no options because all of his movies are just remakes of the original, however, you could do something like Son of Kong, I guess, or something. But to add on top of that, here's why I don't think they will actually do any of those. They have obviously very clearly taken a mainstream media, big blockbuster styled approach to these monster movies. This is their stab at doing this whole connected universe thing. And they have very much so set these movies in the real world. Yes, they are definitely larger than life, and Godzilla vs. Kong especially went a little bit extra over the top. But regardless, the matter of the fact is that these movies haven't really made a ton of money, with Kong Skull Island being the highest grossing worldwide. But just to play the numbers game with you a little bit, Godzilla 2014 brought in $524 million at the worldwide box office. Kong Skull Island, once again being the biggest of the franchise so far, brought in $566 million at the worldwide box office. And King of the Monsters only managed to bring in $386 million at the worldwide box office. Which is really not good considering that Godzilla vs. Kong is already at 350 or at least nearing that point. And Godzilla vs. Kong's domestic opening weekend, even with a global pandemic, brought in $48.7 million, and Godzilla King of the Monsters opening weekend at the domestic box office only brought in $47 million, and that was pre-pandemic. So I think it's safe to say that even with these much more mainstream blockbuster style versions of these monsters not going over the best at the box office, I really can't see them doing something like Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I mean, sure, there are probably other old school Godzilla movies out there that they could do that I didn't mention that could definitely appeal to mainstream audiences a bit more, but still, something as simple as Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, which sounded and looked badass, with none of them going over that well at the box office. I mean, the first two definitely turned a profit. I can't see them going with these far more outlandish ideas. But let's switch it up for a second. What if they took a different approach instead? What if they introduced new monsters or gave other monsters a time to shine and gave them their own solo movies? But the question is, what other mainstream monsters are there for them to cover that, again, are gonna make any sort of impression at the box office? King Ghidorah is dead. Mothra, Rodan, and Mechagodzilla are all gone as well. And it's more than likely that none of those old school monsters that I have mentioned, among many others, would make any sort of dent in the box office at all. Again, Godzilla and King Kong, the two most recognizable monsters in human history, are bringing in these numbers. So what other monsters can even compete with them in terms of popularity? And if they can't even compete with them in terms of popularity, how are they going to compete with them at the box office? Although another quick idea for a different route they could take, when giving other monsters their own solo shots, they could try to create their own monsters, or they can make a movie called like The Hollow Earth or something like that, and really try to expand their universe a bit more on their own terms aside from just Godzilla and Kong and their rogues gallery. So here is one of my ideas. Me personally, I should have said this earlier, I'm Team Kong all the way. King Kong 05 is one of my favorite movies of all time, and Kong Skull Island is probably my favorite, maybe my second favorite, of the MonsterVerse. So the only two options I can see them going with for another King Kong movie, considering it was their biggest at the box office, is another Kong prequel. I mean, Kong Skull Island took place back in the 70s, and where it ended, he was fine, right? He was still on Skull Island, living his life. And then Godzilla vs. Kong takes place in 2021, so there is a huge time frame there that they can cover. So they could very easily do another King Kong movie set in the 80s, the 90s, maybe in like the early, mid, late 2000s, where he gets captured and put in this facility that we find him in at the beginning of Godzilla vs. Kong. Or the other idea is, why don't we just get a King Kong sequel set in the Hollow Earth? It is very possible because, as we have seen, there are currently human characters living in the Hollow Earth. And as we all know, the MonsterVerse loves their human characters. But there are also a ton of cool looking monsters for King Kong to take down. So either of those ideas I think are great, either a prequel or a sequel, but I think their best bet right now is going with King Kong for their next one. The last idea that I wanted to cover is one that has been very popular for a few years now and is arguably more popular now than ever, and that is, what if we got a MonsterVerse and Pacific Rim crossover? And here's the thing, that's actually very possible. Godzilla vs. Kong took place in 2021, the first Pacific Rim takes place, or at least a portion of it takes place, in 2025. That's only a 4-year time difference. It's very easy to say that's something to do with the Hollow Earth or something to do with the events of Godzilla vs. Kong led to the rift being opened that we find in Pacific Rim. And to be honest, I love that idea. The first Pacific Rim, not so much the second one, is awesome. I love that movie. It kicks so much ass. It's great. And seeing either Jaegers, Kaiju, and Godzilla and Kong go at like a 3-way triple threat match would be amazing. Or seeing Godzilla and Kong fight alongside Jaegers to take out even bigger Kaiju would be totally badass. Or seeing Godzilla vs. Kong go against a bunch of Jaegers too would be extremely cool. And I can almost guarantee that this would make money. Yes, sure, Pacific Rim isn't the biggest, most bankable franchise on the market, but I really think that this idea is just too big to fail. Regardless, at the end of the day, I do really enjoy the MonsterVerse, even if I don't love all of the movies. I do love Godzilla and King Kong as characters, and I really do, like many others out there, want to see this MonsterVerse continue. However, I think they need to be very careful with their approach going forward. Because despite these monsters' popularity, Godzilla King of the Monsters is proof that not every single time you put them on the big screen, it's gonna be a big hit. So they have to be very, very smart in their planning and go very tactically about it and really try to feel out what audiences want to see next. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my opinions on this topic. And feel free to let me know what topic you'd like to see me discuss next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.